Rachel was supposed to be back from Austin that afternoon. A 2-day leadership conference, she said. She'd sent me the itinerary and a couple of photos of name badges and keynote slides, nothing that looked staged at the time, but now that I think about it, they could have come from anywhere. She told me she'd be getting in by train around 5. I'll just grab a cab home, she texted that morning, adding a heart emoji at the end, something she hadn't done in weeks. I didn't think anything of it until the driveway lit up with headlights at 6:03 p.m. and I glanced out the front window expecting yellow paint and a meter light. But it wasn't a cab. It was a sleek black Audi, polished to a mirror shine. The logo on the door was gold foil, Orem. Not just a place, the place. High-end, invite-only, the kind of restaurant where people go to propose or sign multimillion-dollar deals. You don't just drop by Orem. You're vetted, or rich, or both. I watched as the back door opened and Rachel stepped out. Slowly, like she didn't want to wrinkle her dress, a black, low-back number I'd never seen before. Her hair was done in soft curls, pinned half up with a jeweled clip that sparkled under the porch light. She looked incredible, sure, but not like someone who'd just spent 48 hours in breakout sessions and networking mixers. She looked like she was coming back from a gala. She didn't look tired. She didn't look like she'd been sitting through keynote speeches and trust-building exercises. She looked like someone who had spent the last few hours being adored. I stepped out onto the porch, doing my best to keep my expression neutral. "Oh," she said, startled like I wasn't supposed to be there. "Hey, babe. Train station, huh?" I asked, nodding toward the car. Her eyes flicked to the vehicle, then back to me. "Oh. Yeah, last-minute change. Got offered a ride by one of the execs I met at the conference. He was headed this way." I raised an eyebrow. "An exec?" She gave a light laugh. "Not like that. Just a guy from one of the panels. Totally harmless." I helped him figure out his hotel situation and he insisted on giving me a lift. Totally harmless. That phrase hung in the air like bad perfume. Speaking of which, she was wearing something new. I know because Rachel had only 2 perfumes she rotated between. But this one? It was muskier, richer. More deliberate. The kind of scent you wear when you want to be remembered. She breezed past me with her bag, stepping into the hallway and kicking off her heels. Her voice carried over her shoulder. "The conference went well. I'll tell you all about it after I shower. I feel gross." Gross wasn't the word I would have used. She looked like she just walked off a fashion spread. And that, more than anything, sent the hairs up on the back of my neck. While she was upstairs, I sat in the living room staring at her shoes. Designer, probably. Not the scuffed-up flats she wore on travel days. A little voice in my head kept whispering things I didn't want to hear. I reached for her bag, something I never would have done before, and stopped myself. That wasn't me. That wasn't us. And yet, it kind of was now, wasn't it? She came down about 20 minutes later in lounge clothes, comfy pants, oversized sweater, hair pulled back in a ponytail. The transformation was jarring. Like she had shed a character. Gone was the glamorous woman who stepped out of the Orem-branded Audi. This version of her had bare feet and carried the scent of Dr. store lotion. She curled up on the couch beside me and launched into a mechanical recap of her trip. Talks about resilience, workshops on agile leadership, a case study about internal disruption at a tech firm. The words came fast, but they didn't land. I was still trying to reconcile the woman describing an HR keynote with the one who stepped out of that car smelling like seduction and success. I helped one of the guys find his hotel after dinner. Poor thing had no idea where he was going, she added at one point. We grabbed a bite at this tiny place near the venue. Not even worth mentioning. Funny, I thought. Orem wasn't tiny. And it sure as hell wasn't forgettable. She excused herself a little while later, claiming she was exhausted. I said goodnight, still rooted in the same spot on the couch. I watched her walk up the stairs, her phone in her hand. 15 minutes later, I checked the Wi-Fi app, something I'd only ever used to troubleshoot our internet. Her phone was offline. No activity since she walked in. I refreshed the list. Still nothing. Airplane mode. I sat there for a long time, just listening to the silence of our house. The sound of the fridge kicking on. The soft creak of pipes. The 1,000 tiny things that happen when you stop talking and just listen. I've been feeling the distance for a while now. But tonight, it felt less like a drift and more like a line had been drawn. She came back looking like a dream. But she didn't bring any warmth with her. Just stories with mismatched edges and a perfume that didn't belong. And for the first time, I realized I didn't believe her. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not even close. Rachel had gone to bed early, claimed she was drained from the trip, and disappeared under the covers without saying much else. Meanwhile, I lay on the couch downstairs, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling like it might give me answers. I replayed the evening a dozen times, frame by frame. The car, the dress, the perfume, her voice, that laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes, the gap between her words and the truth underneath. It wasn't just tonight. I realized that as the hours dragged on and I sat surrounded by the quiet hum of appliances and the distant ticking of our wall clock, this was a tipping point. Not the start of something, but the moment it became impossible to pretend anymore. For months, little things had been tugging at my gut, pulling threads that I never bothered to follow until now. It started subtly. Rachel began listening to a lot of self-improvement content. That wasn't weird, not at first. I even encouraged it. She'd play podcasts in the car, leave TED Talks running while she folded laundry. But slowly, her interests narrowed. They weren't just about growth anymore. They were about boundaries, autonomy, the psychology of desire. Articles with headlines like The Monogamy Myth or Why We Love, Why We Cheat started showing up on her reading list. She'd quote studies at me during dinner, not accusatory, but persistent, like she was trying to make a case without saying what the case was for. I remember one night, a few weeks back, we were brushing our teeth side by side, and she just blurted out, "Do you think people can really be everything for one person forever?" I laughed, thinking it was rhetorical. I said, "I don't know. I think love is more about choosing to keep showing up, right?" She didn't answer, just rinsed her mouth and walked out of the room. Then there was the gym stuff. Rachel's always been pretty active, but around 3 months ago, she got intensely committed. Bought new gear, downloaded tracking apps, started meal prepping like she was training for a triathlon. That alone wasn't suspicious, but the inconsistency in her stories was. She'd mention a new workout buddy one week named Margot, then say something about Brandon helping her with squats the next. The names kept shifting, and when I asked to join her for a session sometime, just to be supportive, she deflected with a smile and said I'd slow her down. At the time, I told myself I was being insecure, that she was just finding her rhythm, enjoying her independence. I didn't want to be the guy who hovered, but the little things piled up. She stopped tagging me in posts. Not that we were social media addicts, but still. Photos of brunch with friends, hikes, even selfies in the gym mirror. I wasn't in any of them. Not even in the comments. Then she changed her profile picture. It used to be the two of us in Colorado, arms around each other, big dorky smiles. She replaced it with a minimalist sketch, a single-line drawing of a woman with her eyes closed. When I asked her about it, she said she wanted something more reflective of her inner life. Whatever that meant. There were other signs. Missed calls I'd never get returned. Weekend errands that stretched into whole afternoons with vague explanations like, ran into an old friend, or got caught up. I'd ask her what she wanted for dinner and she'd shrug, already halfway out the door. Her phone, once casually left around the house, started going with her everywhere, to the bathroom, into the backyard, even when she went to check the mail. And then there was our anniversary. It was our 6th. We had a tradition, take out from the same little Thai place and watching The Secret Life of Walter Mitty in our pajamas. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. This year, she said she had to work late on a campaign launch and barely texted. No card, no flowers, no Thai food. When she came home, she apologized in the kind of voice you use when a meeting runs long. Like she'd forgotten a dentist appointment, not a milestone. "I'll make it up to you," she'd said, setting down her laptop bag like it was just another Tuesday. But she never did. Lying there on the couch, I kept turning these moments over like puzzle pieces. Alone, maybe they didn't mean anything. But now they felt like a breadcrumb trail, one I had ignored for too long. The image of her getting out of that car kept flashing in my mind. It wasn't the glamour that struck me. It was the way she looked comfortable in it. Like she had slipped into someone else's life and liked the fit. Even the way she touched me had changed. She used to run her fingers through my hair when I was stressed. Used to reach for my hand when we crossed the street. But lately, I couldn't remember the last time she initiated a hug, let alone a kiss. When I tried, she'd lean in like she was clocking in for work. Just enough to be polite. I opened our shared photo album on my phone, the one we used to add to after every trip, every holiday. The last upload was from last December. A blurry picture of our cat knocking over a Christmas candle. After that, nothing. Like we had quietly stopped recording our life. It was nearly 3 a.m. when I heard the floor creak above me. Rachel getting up to use the bathroom, probably. I closed the app and stared at the black screen. This wasn't about one night or one strange car. It was about a pattern. A slow erosion. And maybe she didn't say the words out loud, but her actions had been telling me for months. She hadn't been exploring. She had already crossed the line. And deep down, I think I knew. Maybe not the details, but the shape of the truth had been there for a while. I just hadn't let myself see it. Not until now. 2 nights after Rachel's return from Austin or whatever that trip really was, she told me she had an investor dinner across town. She made it sound important. Not optional. Just a casual work thing, she claimed, but her tone was too rehearsed, like she was trying to say the lines without blinking. She wore that same perfume. The one I still couldn't name but couldn't forget either. She didn't dress like she was going to a meeting, though. Not unless meetings now happened in a tailored deep green dress with a slit and heels high enough to tower over most men. You sure you don't need me to drop you off? I asked as she checked her lipstick in the mirror. No, it's all set. Company car's picking me up, she said, not missing a beat. It's just a dinner, Joel. I'll probably be back late. Don't wait up. Right? Just a dinner. She gave me a quick peck on the cheek, barely grazed skin, then disappeared out the front door, heels echoing across the hardwood. I stood there in the foyer long after the door closed. I didn't know what I was going to do. Not exactly. But I knew I couldn't keep pretending. So I walked upstairs. Rachel had a newer laptop for work, something with extra encryption. But her old MacBook, the one we used to stream shows and plan vacations on, was still in the guest room closet, shoved behind some winter coats. She hadn't used it in months. I dusted it off and opened it, my hands trembling as I typed in the password we used to share, our cat's name, plus the year we got married. The screen lit up. I sat on the bed, heart pounding like I was about to steal something, even though I had every right. My stomach twisted with guilt and dread and some other emotion I couldn't name, maybe the fear of what I was about to confirm. Her messaging app was open. She hadn't logged out. And that's when I saw his name, Declan. The threads were everywhere. Long in asterisk mate, personal. This wasn't some flirty exchange or vague emotional connection. This was a full-blown relationship. Months deep, I scrolled through hundreds of messages, nicknames, heart emojis, inside jokes. They referenced things I'd never heard of, a cabin with a clawfoot tub, their spot near the lake, a dog park they liked to visit with our dog Max. My dog. The one I walked in the snow while she was busy with clients. One message read, I keep replaying Saturday night. That bathtub, the petals. I can't stop thinking about how safe I feel with you. Petals. Bathtub. Saturday night. That was the same weekend she told me she was at a branding summit in Santa Fe. Then there were the pictures. Selfies on a hiking trail I didn't recognize, her in his arms, smiling. A blurry *T of Max curled up at the feet of some man by a fire pit. A photo of wine glasses clinking above a spread of food by candlelight with her hand, her ringless hand, resting on his thigh. And then the one that broke me. It was a view from a porch. Lake glimmering at sunset. Her reflection visible in the glass, barefoot, wrapped in a flannel that wasn't hers. Attached to that one was a message, just booked the house again for next month. Counting down the days already. You make everything feel real. I sat back, blinking at the screen, every ounce of blood draining from my face. There was no gray area. No room for misinterpretation. This wasn't just some emotional affair. This was a life. A whole life she was building with someone else while keeping me in the role of the backup plan. I checked her calendar app. Sure enough, the same days next month were marked off. No notes. Just busy. I went back through her shared credit card portal and saw the rental transaction. Listed under a generic name. But it matched the deposit for a vacation rental in Vermont. I clicked open the email receipt, exported the chat logs, and began saving the images to a USB drive I found in the drawer. I didn't cry. Not right then. I felt something worse, clarity. The kind that makes your whole body go still. Everything was there. All the lies, all the quiet decisions that chipped away at our life together. It was like discovering your house had been on fire for months and you were the last one to smell the smoke. I closed the laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, then opened a fresh document. Just a single line, this is what you chose. I wasn't sure what I'd do with that sentence yet. But I knew it needed to be written. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, listening for her return. At 12:41 a.m., the front door creaked open. She came in quietly, heels in hand, hair windblown but lips still colored. I didn't move. Didn't call out. She passed the kitchen, glanced in, saw me startled for a second. Hey! I didn't think you'd still be up. I noticed, I said evenly. She paused, thrown. The dinner went long. Investors had a lot of questions. I nodded, pretending to believe her. You hungry? She hesitated. No, I grabbed something. Cool, I said. I'm going to bed. And I left her standing in the hallway alone with whatever version of herself she'd rehearsed for the night. I didn't know what came next exactly, but the truth was no longer something I was chasing. It was sitting in my pocket on a USB drive. And tomorrow everything would start to change. I didn't confront Rachel the next morning. Or the one after that. It's strange how quickly your instincts switch when you go from being confused to certain. I didn't want answers anymore. I didn't need them. I already had everything, the screenshot ts, the receipts, the photos, the unfiltered confession of a second life tucked into a single thread of messages. So I did what she never expected, I got quiet. For 2 days, I played the part of the slightly distant, slightly tired husband. When she asked what was wrong, I said work was draining me. She didn't push. She never did when she was already looking elsewhere. I started documenting everything. I scanned the messages into multiple backups. I emailed the files to myself from a dummy account I created. I took photos of her credit card charges, the ones that matched the booking at the lake house, the ones for the restaurant at Orem, and one for a pet supply store near his neighborhood. A collar with Max's name. I found the confirmation buried in her Gmail. She'd ordered it to his address. That one hurt, but I stayed calm. If I'd let myself rage, I would have burned down the whole house with it. Instead, I focused on what had to be done. First, I called a moving company. Told them I had items to pack and ship to an out-of-town address. Gave them Rachel's parents' place. I didn't tell them it was my wife's stuff. Just that it was a shared household split. The driver said he'd be discreet. Then I called a locksmith. Scheduled for the day she'd be at her next client dinner. I printed a cover letter. 1 page. Clean font. No threats. No pleas. Just a note that said, "These are the pieces you left behind. I won't carry them for you." I clipped the USB to the note and put them both in a small black envelope. I left it by the door. Next, I started erasing. Not angrily, methodically. I took down every photo of us from the walls. Every frame, every magnet on the fridge, every memory that had once felt permanent. I stacked them in boxes labeled "Return to Sender." I cleared her things from the drawers, the closet, the bathroom counter. I didn't throw them out, I wasn't her. I simply removed her from the space the way she had already removed me from her life. I went room by room, noticing the ridiculous little details that make a house feel like it belongs to 2 people. Her throw blanket on the couch. The lavender candle she lit when she took baths. A half-read novel with a folded corner sitting under the coffee table. I packed it all. I was careful. Respectful, even. The way you handle something dead. I found an old duffel in the attic and filled it with the few things I couldn't stand to look at anymore. The first anniversary journal we'd started together. The postcard from the Grand Canyon with our inside joke written on it. The matchbox from the jazz club we loved in New Orleans. I left Max's stuff. He was staying with me. I wouldn't let her take him to some stranger's place, even if the stranger was feeding him gourmet treats and calling him buddy in texts. And then I called a motel. Not in town. Not even in the next zip code. I booked a week under a name I hadn't used since college, an old nickname from a summer job. Paid in cash. Left no credit trail. I gave my boss a heads up that I'd be remote for a few days, told him I had a personal situation and needed space. He didn't ask questions. Just said to take care of myself. The day everything was set in motion, Rachel left the house around 5:45 p.m. Hair curled, heels on, face bright. She kissed me on the cheek again, a carbon copy of the moment that had started all of this. "Don't wait up," she said, like it was a joke. But I wasn't laughing. The movers arrived at 6:20. Polite, fast, no questions. I gave them the labeled boxes, the suitcases, the furniture pieces she'd brought into our home. They didn't touch anything that was mine. By 7:30, the place was bare. Not empty, but stripped of her presence. Like she'd been airbrushed out of the picture. I changed the locks right after. When she returned, I imagined she didn't understand it at first. Maybe she fumbled with her key. Thought it was jammed. Maybe she texted me. I'll never know, I had blocked her by then. She would have walked around the porch looking for signs. The wind chime was gone. The welcome mat with our initials? Rolled up. The front lights were still on, but the inside was dark. Unrecognizable. That's when she would have seen the envelope. Small, square, waiting patiently where she'd find it. I left the house 5 minutes before she arrived. I took the back road and didn't look in the rearview mirror. At the motel, I checked in under the alias, handed over cash, and took my key. Room 209. No frills, no photos on the wall, just 4 beige walls and a bed that didn't carry the weight of broken promises. I sat on the edge of it for a long time. Max curled up at my feet, sensing that something had ended. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't drink. I just sat there, listening to the hum of the vending machine outside and the quiet scratch of my dog's breathing. It was done. No confrontation. No big finale. No screaming match or dramatic exit. Just the truth delivered plainly. And a locked door behind me. It had been a week since I disappeared from Rachel's life. A week since the locks changed and the movers delivered her past to her parents' doorstep. I hadn't heard from her directly, not through phone, email, or any mutual friends. I blocked every avenue. I was done playing the part of the man she could return to if things with Declan fell apart. But then her family reached out. It was her sister, Claire, who messaged first. A short clip text. "We'd like to talk. Face to face. No drama. Just the family." Part of me wanted to ignore it. But another part, the exhausted, quietly burning part, knew this was the moment to finish the story. Not just for them. For me. I agreed to meet them at her parents' house that Sunday. The moment I pulled up to the familiar brick ranch, I felt my stomach turn. I hadn't been there since Easter when Rachel made her famous lemon bars and her dad insisted on playing cards after dinner. It used to feel like a second home. Now it was a place haunted by echoing questions and polite betrayals. Her dad answered the door. Harold. A man of few words, usually measured and warm. He didn't smile this time, just nodded and stepped aside. "She's not here," he said plainly, as if reading my mind. "We asked her not to come." Claire was already on the couch, arms folded, back rigid. Their mom, Diane, sat in the chair by the window, clasping a mug of tea like it was the only thing anchoring her to the moment. I took the spot at the end of the sectional. Nobody spoke for a moment. Finally, Claire broke the silence. "Joel, we were hoping you could explain what happened. She hasn't told us much. Just that you left. Cut contact. Sent her things with a note like she was a stranger." I stared at her. At all of them. These were people who once celebrated our birthdays. People who toasted our engagement. People who sent anniversary cards and Christmas gifts and called me family. So I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I reached into my bag and placed the USB drive on the coffee table. "This," I said calmly, "is why." Diane looked confused. Harold leaned forward slightly. Claire stared at it like it was radioactive. I pulled out my tablet. I'd preloaded everything. Evidence neatly arranged in a slideshow. I didn't speak at first. I let the images speak for me. One by one, I flipped through the photos. Rachel in the lake house. Rachel at the restaurant. Rachel cuddled up next to a man who wasn't me, sipping wine and smiling like she had never known a different life. Max sitting happily on Declan's lap. Rachel's hand bare of her wedding ring. Their faces shifted with every frame. Then came the messages. I didn't read them aloud. I just held the screen long enough for them to absorb the words. Her nicknames for him. The plans. The confessions. The day she told him she felt freer with him than she ever had at home. And finally, the receipt, the lake house rental. Booked on the card I paid off every month. The room went still. So quiet I could hear the ticking clock over the kitchen sink. Diane set her mug down carefully. Her hands were shaking. "Jesus," Harold said, rubbing his face. Claire finally spoke. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" I looked her dead in the eye. "Because I didn't owe you the pain. Not until now. Not until you asked for it." She nodded slowly. Her shoulders dropped like something heavy had settled onto her back and wouldn't be shaken off. Diane was crying now. Silent tears, no sobbing. Just a slow leak from eyes that once lit up every time Rachel walked into the room. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything," I replied. "I didn't come for apologies. Or explanations. I came so you'd understand why your daughter came home to an empty house." Harold looked at the USB like it might explode. "Is this all of it?" "There's more. That's just the summary." "And Declan?" I shrugged. "All I know is he exists. He's real. He's where she's been when she wasn't with me." Claire's voice cracked. She said you were cold. That you checked out emotionally. That she was trying to fix things." I laughed, not out of humor but disbelief. "Fix what? Our last anniversary?" She didn't even remember it. I reminded her the day before. She said she had a meeting. Didn't come home until the next morning. Claire looked down at her lap. "I didn't know." "No," I said. You didn't want to know. The weight of it all seemed to collapse the room. Diane sobbed softly. Harold stood, walked into the kitchen, and stayed there. Claire just sat there, unmoving. I stood. I'm not here to gloat, I said. I'm not looking for closure or to be the bigger man. I just wanted the silence to end. So the next time she tells you a story, you'll know the rest. I headed for the door. Claire called after me. Joel? I turned slightly. Are you going to be okay? I gave a small nod. Eventually. And then I left. I didn't look back. Not at the house. Not at the people I used to call my second family. For the first time since all this started, I didn't feel like I was running from something. I felt like I was finally walking away. The messages started 3 days after the meeting with her family. At first, they were cautious. One-line texts, almost polite, "Can we talk, and please call me when you're ready." I didn't respond. I'd already said everything I needed to, just not in words she wanted to hear. Then the tone shifted. She accused me of being dramatic, cold, unforgiving. She said things like, "You're shutting down a conversation that could have saved us, and you always ran when things got hard." It was strange reading those words, like watching someone throw punches underwater. She was grasping at anything, trying to pull the narrative back in her direction. Later came the regret. I made a mistake. Declan was a mistake. You didn't deserve that. No one does. If I could undo it, I would. She tried offering solutions. Counseling. Open dialogue. A fresh start. A new dynamic, her favorite phrase lately, like we could rebuild on the ash and pretend the fire hadn't happened. But I knew better. I never replied. Instead, I sold the house. Quietly. Casually. To a couple with a golden retriever and a baby on the way. I left the dining table, the one we picked out together, and the wind chimes she'd always loved. I let them have it all. I didn't need any of it following me to the next chapter. The move was small. Just a few counties over. I found a modest apartment near the river where the floors creaked and the neighbors minded their business. I bought furniture that didn't match anything from our past. I painted the walls the opposite color of what we once chose. I deleted my old social media profiles. Got a new phone number. Started walking max twice a day instead of one. I even stopped wearing the watch she'd given me for our 5th anniversary. It wasn't about running. It was about breathing again. One night, I found a photo I'd missed during the purge buried in an old book I was packing to donate. It was from our first beach trip. We were tan and windblown, holding iced coffees and smiling like the world couldn't touch us. I stared at it for a long time. Then I burned it in the sink. Watched the corners curl and blacken until it was just ash. And I slept better that night than I had in months. There was no revenge. No shouting match in a crowded restaurant. No public spectacle. Just silence. Because that was the most honest answer I had left. I didn't need Rachel to cry in front of me. I didn't need her to beg. I didn't even care if she regretted it in 6 months or 6 years. That part wasn't mine to hold. She stayed with Declan for a little while, according to someone who used to work with her. But guys like him, they're good at the escape, not the staying. Last I heard, he moved to another state. Typical. Rachel texted once more after that. Just 4 words, "I still miss us." I read it. Then deleted it. I wasn't the same person anymore. I wasn't living to be good enough for someone who always had one foot out the door. I didn't measure my worth by how much I could forgive or how quietly I could bleed. I was done. The beauty of starting over is that you don't have to announce it. You just start. And when someone knocks on that old door, the one they once walked through without asking, all they'll find is silence. And a lock that no longer fits.